right? So we will continue our discussion. First, what we had discussed industrial turbines in system level details, and then we have gone through different types of jet engines, right? So we have finished that part, and now just yesterday we had started discussing about compressors. So we will go through compressors in the next few classes. Today we will go through centrifugal compressors, then subsequent classes we will go through axial compressor, and then briefly we will discuss about combustion chambers, and finally finish with a brief discussion and mathematical analysis of turbines and other aspects of turbine like turbine blade cooling, turbine blade material, turbine blades basically. So let me just go through these slides again once. So we have started discussing about centrifugal and axial compressors, and we have noted what are the differences. So centrifugal compressor is a compressor where the air comes in axially and goes out radially. And in contrast, we had seen that axial compressor is a compressor where the air comes in axially and also goes out axially. Okay. So what were the main differences that we discussed? Main advantages of centrifugal compressor is that because the rotating part, which is known as the impeller, acts on the air for a longer distance, centrifugal action, centrifugal force, it compresses the air to a higher pressure. A single stage can compress the air to a higher pressure as compared to a single axial compressor stage, which can only compress the air to a very moderate pressure increase. Okay, so we need larger number of axial stages for a specific amount of rise of pressure. Say if I want to raise the pressure by 20 times, I will need much larger number of axial compressor stages as compared to centrifugal compressor stages. As a result, the length of the engine will increase. But still axial compressor stages are used. Solely axial compressor stages are used. Centrifugal compressors are not used because the centrifugal compressor has a large frontal area, large area which is obstructing the flow as compared to the inlet size. As a result, it has very large drag, and that is very bad for fuel economy in general for aircraft efficiency. So in general, all modern aircraft use axial compressor, but we will still use centrifugal compressor for historical reasons. So sometimes there have been designs where there are a multiple number of axial compressors, as you can see here. 5 axial compressor stages can be seen, and then followed by a single centrifugal compressor stage. So each of the axial compressor stage will increase the pressures by a smaller amount. 6 compressor stages or 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 compressor stages are there, and then followed by a single centrifugal compressor stage, which will raise the pressure by a significant bit. So we can avoid having, we can replace multiple axial compressor stages with a single centrifugal compressor stage. Obviously, the frontal area will increase because not only you have to have the diameter of the impeller larger than the cross-sectional area of the intake. You can see that the axial compressor has a much lower much lower diameter. Then when it comes to the same air flow rate, because obviously the same air is passing through it, the centrifugal compressor cross-sectional area has to increase because of the nature of the impeller, that the flow has to move in a radial direction from the axial direction. That not only that increases the area, but subsequently you need to have a diffuser also. That increased velocity that happens in the impeller, that kinetic energy needs to be converted to increase in pressure. So that diffuser itself will also lead to an increase in more cross-sectional area, as you can see here. And then finally, the air has to be deviated in from the radial direction to the axial direction to pass it to the combustion chamber. So design is quite different. And even in axial compressors also, you need to, after the rotating part, you need to convert the kinetic energy to increase in pressure. But for that case, the diffusers, which are known as stators, also have similar cross-sectional area as the rotors. That does not need to increase in cross-sectional area. Okay. So anyway, we will discuss about axial compressors later. Today we will discuss about centrifugal compressors and try to do some mathematical analysis. So you can see the screen, right? I was talking, but I did not ask you whether the screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now this picture on the right hand side shows a impeller of a centrifugal compressor. You can see that. So this so it is difficult showing on screen. It would have been ideal if I was in a classroom and could directly show you, but you have to follow me here. So this part that you can see on the top of the blades, okay, on the top of the blades, which are known as vanes for this case. So these are known as vanes. So these blades or vanes have a top part. This part is the part through which the air comes in. Okay. So I don't know. You can see my mouse, right? Mouse pointer. Or
Yes,
is there
sir.
any lag? Okay. There may be some lag in my voice and may come earlier as compared to the changes that I'm showing on screen. That cannot be avoided if the internet connection. It depends on the internet connection. That screen lag. Anyway, so this inner part where the blade starts, okay, this round part that you can see is the hub, and the inner part is known as compressor eye hub, okay, or and if the radius or diameter will be called as, in our calculation we will call it as eye hub diameter or eye hub radius. Okay, so it is the inner part of the eye section. Eye section is the circular section through which the air comes into the compressor. Okay, it is circular, it is not circular, it is the annular section. So the hub diameter is the inner diameter of the eye, and the outer diameter is this pointed section. If you join all the pointed section, you will get a circle. Okay, this pointed section, this is known as eye tip. Okay, so the air comes in between the eye hub and the eye tip. So the intake area. Okay. So we can find out what is the cross-sectional area of the eye, which will be equal to pi into d tip. If we call the tip diameter as dt, pi into, all this will be there in the calculations later on. Just I am explaining here. Pi dt square by 4 minus pi dh square by 4, where dh is the hub diameter. Okay, so this gives us the cross-sectional area of the annular intake. Okay. So how does the flow come in? It comes in an axial direction. Okay, along the axis of the impeller, along the axis on like about which the impeller is rotating. You can also see, we will discuss later, that the angle, that it is not fixed, that the blades are twisted and the angle is also changing. Okay, it is not clear from here, but the hub angle at the hub and angle at the tip is not same. Okay, the blade is twisted. I think you can see from here, the blade is getting twisted. Okay, sorry. So it changes. So the angle at which it is attached at the hub is different from the angle at the tip. This will depend on the relative velocity. Again, we will see through calculation. So we'll see that the relative velocity is changing along the length of the eye. Okay, obviously it will change because what happens, all the points are rotating at the same angular velocity, but it means that the linear velocity of the blade is different. At the hub it is less and at the tip it is more, but the actual velocity of the fluid at which the fluid comes in is same. So as a result, because the actual velocity is same but the blade velocity is different, the relative velocity will change. We will draw the velocity diagrams and we will understand this point. But keep in mind that this is twisted. Okay, if you have any question, you can ask me. Even at the end also, they may be twisted, or they may be, in this case, it is twisted. They may be parallel to the, not parallel, perpendicular to the circumference. The blade can also be perpendicular to the circumference. There are advantages and disadvantages that also we'll discuss today. Okay, so this is the impeller. After the impeller section, the fluid goes out. What is the action of the impeller? Impeller is rotating. How is it rotating? It is mounted on the shaft, and the shaft is being rotated by the turbine. Okay, so the work comes in from the turbine. So the impeller is rotating, and you can see that as the gas will pass, air will pass from the center to the outer periphery. Okay, the outer periphery of the impeller, which is the impeller tip, not the eye tip, the impeller tip. Okay. So the velocity will increase because of centrifugal action. And there is another effect there. What is happening? The cross-sectional area is also increasing. Okay. So at the eye section, so the area between two blades will be less, obviously, as compared to the end section at the tip. Okay. Why? Because obviously the circumference is increasing. So, and the number of blades remains same. So the cross-sectional area through which the flow is passing is also increasing. So it is also acting like a diffuser. Okay. So there is diffusion here itself. So both the velocity is increasing as well as the pressure is increasing because of the diffusion action. Okay. So in this case, both the velocity increases as well as the pressure increases. And this increase of both velocity and pressure occurs because we are providing external work to the impeller. Okay. As a result, both the kinetic energy as well as the stagnation pressure can be increased. So both the enthalpy as well as pressure increases. Okay. Both the enthalpy as well as the pressure increases. So then subsequently there will be a diffuser section. We will see in a schematic diagram. Here it can be seen briefly here. The role of the diffuser is to change the cross-sectional area by changing, lower the velocity and increase the pressure even further. Already the pressure has increased, but we will increase the pressure even further by reducing the velocity. Okay. Ultimately, the aim of the compressor is to increase the pressure. It is not to increase the velocity. We don't need high velocity. We want low velocity in the combustion chamber. So we'll convert this kinetic energy to further rise in pressure in the diffuser. So diffuser is like a normal diffuser. It increases the cross-sectional area. Okay. Another view, again, we will not go into the system details, but you can see a centrifugal compressor. This is the eye section. You can see that it is twisted, and this is the end of the impeller. You can see in this case, the blades are perpendicular to the circumference. Okay. It is mounted on the shaft. There are other parts here. We will not bother with that. Lot of complicated, like lot of other parts are there. Starter motor is there, obviously, to start rotating the shaft because it cannot start from static, right? And then fuel igniter. So fuel pump will be there to inject the fuel into the combustion chamber. So it's a complicated device. Okay. But again, the thing you can notice is that the intake area is much less than the cross-sectional area. Okay, so let us come to the schematic diagram, which will give us a better understanding. So this schematic diagram shows you the view, say from the axial direction. So we are looking from the axial direction. Okay. So, and the schematic diagram is along the plane of the along the radial plane. Okay. So it is along the radial plane. So again, just if we take a section, if we look from this plane, okay, along the axial direction from the side of the axial compressor, if you look, you will see this view. Okay. Here you have to imagine even somewhat more I will discuss. Okay. So how the flow is coming in this direction for this diagram. What is the direction of the flow at the intake? So this is the impeller eye that you can notice, right? Impeller eye. So this is the impeller eye hub, and this is the impeller eye tip, and the width is shown here. Okay, the change in radius from the hub to the tip. So we can obviously calculate what is the cross-sectional area of the eye through which the flow will come in. Now you can see in the schematic diagram, this I have taken from one of the books. So you can see that the blade is shown as bent. Okay, twisted, not twisted, it is bent. The angle has changed. So here the blade is shown as if it is facing you. Okay, but here the blade is not facing you. The end of the blade is shifted from the perpendicular direction, from the direction from which you are viewing. Okay, what is the reason for that? Can any of you say? This is accurate, so obviously it will be bent in that direction. But what is the reason for that? From which direction is the flow coming?
So axially.
Yes. With respect to the screen, can you explain what is the flow direction?
So into the plane of the screen.
Correct. So it is coming from towards you into the plane of the screen. Okay, and the flow is coming from the intake or inlet. Okay, or if there is an external diffuser from there. So the flow is coming with a certain velocity. Everywhere the velocity is same along the cross-sectional area. So even the flow direction also can be different. It may not be exactly perpendicular to the screen, which we will study later. But at this moment, let us assume that the flow, there is a pipe. Okay, there is a pipe through which the flow is coming. What is the direction of the pipe? The pipe is perpendicular. So pipe is going from you towards the screen. So the flow velocity everywhere is similar. Okay, and it is, what is the direction of flow? It is, as you have correctly explained, it is coming from towards you towards the screen. Okay, so the velocity is diagram. If I draw the velocity vector will be perpendicular to the screen. The arrow will point from you towards the screen, right? So that is the absolute velocity. Okay, what is the velocity of the blade at the eye section? How can we find the velocity?
Relative velocity is going to be at an angle because with respect to velocity of the
yes. So the
rotation.
blade velocity, blade is moving towards the right hand side as being shown by the arrow, right? So with respect to the blade or the vane, so here at any of the point there is the blade is moving towards the right side. If I take a point, it is just moving towards the right side. Okay, like this. If you can follow towards this side. Like this, it is moving. Okay, at any of the point. So let us take at this central line. This is the direction at which the velocity vector of the blade. Okay, blade speed. So at the hub it will be less, at the tip it will be more, at the mean diameter it will be somewhere in between. And the velocity at which the actual fluid is coming is perpendicular to this, from towards you to the screen. Okay, so we can draw a velocity triangle. Okay, that triangle will not be in that plane. The triangle will be in a plane which is perpendicular to the screen. Okay, so I cannot show it here. If it was board, I could have shown. So you have to imagine here, there is a vector which is coming from you towards the tip here. Okay, from you towards this base of this arrow. Okay, so from towards you to the screen, and so this is the actual velocity. Okay, so sum of the relative velocity and the blade velocity will give the actual velocity. So this is the blade velocity. So what will be the relative velocity? Relative velocity will be from this point, if you draw the vector from the end of the blade velocity to the beginning of the actual velocity arrow, so towards you. Okay, so this will be the relative velocity. So you can see that, not like this, sorry, better way to draw would be this. So from you towards this base is the relative velocity, then the blade velocity, that will give the actual velocity, which is perpendicular. Okay, so the relative velocity is at a direction which is in a plane perpendicular to the plane of the screen, but it is at an angle to the central line. Okay, that's why you can see that the blade is curved at the top. Is this clear, or if there is any doubt, please ask me question here. Do you understand what is the direction of the relative velocity?
Yes, sir.
Sir, could you please repeat it?
Okay, so imagine a plane. I cannot show the plane here. Imagine a plane which is perpendicular to the plane of the screen. you can see the screen. The plane is perpendicular, so the plane cuts the screen at this arrow section. Okay, and it is going perpendicular to the screen towards you. Okay, so this plane is, so you can imagine that I have put a paper or page which is perpendicular to the screen. I have attached the paper perpendicular to the screen at this point. Okay. Now at the, on that plane we will draw the velocity triangle. Okay. So on that plane the blade velocity is this arrow again, which is along the screen also, but we can draw along the perpendicular plane also. Okay. So it is basically the junction of the perpendicular plane and the plane of the screen. Now, what is the actual velocity of the flow? It is coming from you towards the plane of the screen. So on the plane, perpendicular plane, it is like a straight line towards the screen. Okay. On the perpendicular plane, it is like a straight line towards the screen. Okay. I cannot show it here because it is out of the plane of the screen. So the relative velocity plus the blade velocity should be equal to the actual velocity. Now, what will be the triangle in the plane perpendicular to the screen? It will go from you, okay, from the base of the actual velocity and meet the base of this arrow. Okay, so it is along the perpendicular to the screen, but going from you in the towards the left direction along that plane, going from you towards the left direction, left and front direction to meet this base of the arrow. Okay, so this is the relative velocity at the inlet. Okay, I will show you the velocity diagram, but at this moment, just imagine that this is the velocity triangle, okay, out of the plane. So as a result, you can see that the flow relative to the, so if you're sitting on the impeller, you will see the flow coming from out of the plane at an angle which is not perpendicular. Okay, it will come at an angle to the plane. I hope this is clear. Okay, you have to imagine this because otherwise it is difficult. So I will show the velocity diagram. Maybe it will make more clear. Okay. So now this is the plane, the right hand side, not the left hand side. The right hand side shows the plane which was previously perpendicular. So this plane is perpendicular. So you can imagine that this has been rotated about the plane. So this is perpendicular to the plane of the screen, previous plane of the screen. Okay. So this is the direction which and in which the actual flow is coming. Okay. Actual flow velocity is shown by C1. This is the direction in which the actual flow is coming. This is the, so your screen is along this line and this is where you are sitting. Okay, so flow is coming from towards you, towards the screen. And the blade velocity is along this line. So the relative velocity is V1 as shown here. It comes at an angle alpha. So as a result, the blade are bent at this angle. Okay, at this angle, as you can see. Okay, so this is the angle. So this is like the cross cut section. Okay, for this. Okay, so this is showing the plane which is perpendicular to the screen. Okay, and this is showing the plane which is along the screen. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So once the flow comes in, gradually its direction gets changed. Okay. So the flow comes in like this. This is the impeller eye. Now you can see from another angle, another section, and it gradually changes direction from the axial to the radial direction. Okay. In this plane, you cannot see the change of direction towards you to the screen, and then gets changed along the plane of the screen. So it goes out along the plane of the screen. The flow goes out along the plane of the screen. Okay. This is along the plane of the screen. Now, once it goes out along the plane of the screen, what is the relative velocity at which it goes out? It will be obviously guided by the vane. So the relative velocity is the velocity perpendicular to the circumference. Okay, it goes out straight from the circumference. This is the relative velocity. Okay, but the blade itself is moving with certain velocity. So the actual velocity at which it will go out will be at an angle with the blades. Okay, it will be like this. I will show these things later here itself. We will, but here let me discuss what happened. It goes out at an angle. Then there is the diffuser. Okay, you can see these are the diffusers. There are multiple diffusers, like 10, 12 diffusers. What is the role of the diffuser? So these diffusers take in the fluid, and gradually the channel width increases. The diffuser channel width increases. So whatever is the kinetic energy at the inlet, gradually the kinetic energy is reduced. It's like a normal diffuser. The cross-section area increases and the pressure increases. Okay. So once the diffusion action is done, the pressure has increased further and the velocity is lower. Now it is bent away from the screen direction and goes towards the combustion chamber. So this bend takes you into the screen, okay, into the screen towards the combustion chamber. Combustion chamber is further away behind the screen. Okay. So this is how this is the working principle of a centrifugal compressor. We will try to understand this better by this schematic diagram along with the velocity triangles. Okay. Same schematic diagram, but now the diffuser is not shown because all the work input occurs in the impeller. Diffuser is like a normal diffuser, opposite of a nozzle. So it's that there is no work input. So stagnation enthalpy remains constant. Only change occurs is that static enthalpy increases, static pressure increases at the cost of kinetic energy. Okay, but all the work input and all the increase in stagnation enthalpy occurs in the impeller. Okay, there is no increase in stagnation enthalpy in the diffuser. Stagnation enthalpy remains fixed in the diffuser. This can be easily seen from the first law. Okay, because there is no work input or heat output in the diffuser, no change in stagnation enthalpy occurs. All the stagnation enthalpy change occurs due to work input in the impeller. Okay, so please ask me questions if you are unable to follow. Okay, so once you are able to understand the diagrams clearly, everything is easy. If you cannot understand the diagram, then it is tricky. You will not be able to solve the problems. Okay, the problems are just based on the velocity diagrams. We will see that once you understand the velocity diagram clearly, you can solve any of the problems very easily. We will solve a problem today. And I have given also 2 more problems in the assignment sheet, which I have uploaded today. Those problems are taken from the solved problems from the book. Not today's problem. Today's problem I just created as a simple problem, but the 2 problems I have taken from the book of El Sayed Ahmed. There are more problems there. Some of them are beyond the scope of our syllabus, but some of them you can try. So yes, so now let us look at the diagram. So we will call this as R1. Okay, the mean radius is R1M. Okay, which is the, so 1 denotes the I, 2 denotes the end of the impeller, tip of the impeller. Okay, so 1 again has different meaning. So 1 at the hub section, which I can call as R1H, is the radius of the hub. R1T will be the radius of the tip. And if we do all the calculations based on the mean diameter, we will call that as R1 mean. Okay, so or R1. Okay, that is the mean diameter, mean radius, sorry. And R2, section 2 is at the end of the impeller. Okay, this is going to be 0.2. Okay, similarly, we will describe all the temperatures also based on this. So T1 and T01 are the static and stagnation temperatures at the inlet at the I section, and T2 and T02 are the static and stagnation temperature at the outlet, exit of the impeller. And section 3, T03, is the stagnation temperature at the exit of the diffuser. Okay, so section 3 is at the exit of the diffuser, which I have not shown here. Means I have taken this from the book, so it is not shown here. So stagnation temperature at the inlet is T01. Stagnation temperature at the exit of the impeller is T02. Stagnation temperature at the exit of the diffuser is T03. Please note these things, okay, which will be required in the discussion, mathematical calculation. Omega is the angular velocity, okay, and the velocity diagram at the exit. Velocity diagram at the exit looks like this. So this is for a different case. For which so this is not correct in the sense that this is, if the blades are end just perpendicular to the circumference, okay, the exit velocity will be in this, along this line, along what CR2 is showing. Okay, so we will draw our own velocity diagrams. This will be the direction of the exit velocity C2. We'll call the absolute velocities as C1 and C2. Okay, relative velocities as V1 and V2, and blade velocities as U1 and U2. So C1 will be along the direction shown as CR. C2 will be along the direction shown as CR2. Okay, if the blades are perpendicular to the circumference. Okay. And sorry, not C2, V2. I am confused. You should correct me. V2 is the relative velocity, right? What will be the relative velocity at the exit? The relative velocity is the velocity at which the flow is going out relative to the impeller. So if you are sitting on the impeller, you can see that the flow goes out in a straight direction along this circumference, means across the circumference. So V2 will be along the CR2. Okay. V2 is the relative velocity, and U2 is the blade velocity. Okay. U2 is the blade velocity. It's not shown here as U2. We'll draw our diagram, which is along this line. Okay. And accordingly, the absolute velocity which a person outside the impeller sees is C2. Okay, which is the summation of the blade velocity and the relative velocity. That is the velocity, absolute velocity. So C2 is the direction at which the absolute velocity occurs. Accordingly, you can see that the diffuser is also at an angle. Diffuser is not straight out from the impeller. Okay, it is at an angle relative to the circumference of the vanes of the impeller. Okay, because the absolute velocity is at a direction which is different from the radial direction. So that is the reason. So the absolute velocity is not in the radial direction. The relative velocity is in the radial direction. So this is the velocity triangle. At the outlet, at the inlet, the velocity triangle is the velocity flow comes in at velocity C1 perpendicular to the direction of the screen, and the relative velocity is V1, which is at an angle. Okay, at an angle in the plane perpendicular to the screen, and the blade velocity is U1. Okay, it is shown as UE, but it is U1. We will call it as U1. Okay, so let us go to our own diagrams and try to understand this better. Our own diagrams. And we will use the notation that I have shown, like what we are using in the diagram. That notation you should use, not that in the books. So what are the components? To summarize, we have an inlet section. Okay. Then we have the impeller, which is one of the main sections of the centrifugal compressor, main part. Then we have the diffuser, and beyond the diffuser, there is the casing or volute, which collects the flow out of the diffuser and brings it to the combustion chamber. Okay. So impeller is the rotating part. It increases the flow velocity, also increases the stagnation pressure because of work input. Diffuser is the static part. It increases the static pressure by reducing the kinetic energy. The stagnation enthalpy and stagnation pressure ideally should remain constant. Stagnation enthalpy remains constant. Stagnation pressure ideally should remain constant. But if there are frictional losses, the stagnation pressure decreases by a small amount. Okay. So again, the same velocity diagram, but using our notation and drawn more accurately. Okay. So this is R1H is the hub diameter of the impeller eye. R1T is the tip diameter of the impeller eye. R1 will be the mean diameter, or R1M we can write as the mean diameter, which is not shown here. This is the impeller eye. Okay, flow enters axially. So flow enters from towards you to the screen. Then the flow direction changes from the direction perpendicular to the screen towards along the plane of the screen, and it goes out at velocity V2. Okay, the relative velocity is V2. So the direction of the relative velocity is radial. Okay, because the vanes are radial. The vanes need not be radial, so the vanes can bend towards the back. That is known as backward swept vanes, which we will study later. But for most cases, it is radial. Okay. So if it is radial, the velocity goes out in the radial direction, V2, which is shown here. Okay. And the blade velocity here is U2. Okay. The blade velocity here is U2. So ideally, the flow velocity, actual flow velocity, okay, should have a component along the wheel direction, tangential direction, also known as wheel direction, WHIRL. Okay, wheel. Along the wheel direction, there should be a component which should be equal to u2, because that is the velocity of the blade. So the blade is pushing the flow in the wheel direction along this direction, right? So the blade is pushing the flow along this direction. So ideally, the component along this direction, which is known as the wheel direction, WHIRL, okay, or tangential direction, should be equal to u2. But what happens is that the average velocity of the fluid along this direction is slightly lesser than the blade velocity. Why it happens? Because the fluid which is just near the blade, okay, the fluid which is just near the blade is pushed along by the blade at u2 velocity. But the fluid that is further away from the blade does not have the same pushing action. Okay, so it goes out with a smaller tangential velocity, smaller wheel velocity. Although the blade here is pushing, going at u2 velocity, this action is transmitted further away, resulting in a smaller velocity of the fluid. So the average velocity along the entire cross-sectional area between two blades is slightly less than u2. Okay, so this decrease, this ratio is denoted or defined as a factor which is known as slip factor. Okay, so the actual average wheel component or tangential component of the velocity of the fluid can be written as CW2. Why W? Because it is in the wheel direction. Okay. So CW2, 2 because it is at point 2, W because of wheel, and C because it is the absolute velocity. So component of absolute velocity along the wheel direction at point 2 is given by CW2, and ideally it should have been equal to U2, but actually it is equal to sigma into U2, where sigma is known as slip factor. It has a value. What should be its value? Will it be greater than 1 or less than 1?
Less than 1.
Less than 1. It is slightly less than 1. Okay. So it can be 0.9 or 0.85 or greater 0.92, 0.93 like this. Okay. So can you tell now, like if we change the geometry, so if we increase the number of blades or decrease the number of blades, vanes, which are called as vanes, if I increase the number of vanes or decrease the number of vanes, so if I increase the number of vanes, will sigma increase? Or if I decrease the number of vanes, sigma will increase? What will cause the increase of sigma? We want more sigma, right? So that we will see that more the wheel component, more is the compression. Yes.
Increasing the number of vanes will increase the slip factor.
Correct. Because the average distance between the two blades is less. So we get like the action of the blade is, yes. You get less slip, means you get so if I have say very close blade like this, very near to it, almost all the velocity, all the fluid will go out at very near to U2 velocity. But if I have very large distances, say if I have only 4 blades, one is here, one is here, so the blade fluid which is very farther away from this will have much lesser velocity in the tangential direction, because the action does not get transmitted like rotational motion to the same extent here. Okay, so you are correct. So increasing the number of vanes will increase the slip factor, but we cannot arbitrarily keep on increasing the number of vanes, because one is that the cross-sectional area for fluid will vanes have certain thickness, right? So the
Flow rate
total
will
cross
be
section.
decreased.
Yes. Yes.
Flow rate will be decreased if we
Correct.
increase.
So if we keep the flow rate constant, then the velocity will increase, relative velocity, right? So it will increase the frictional losses. Flow rate depends on other factors, right? Flow rate will depend on your system design. You have a certain mass flow rate depending on your power requirement, on your thrust requirement. If we keep the flow rate constant, the relative velocity has to increase, V2 has to increase, or any relative velocity along this line has to increase. So it will lead to increased frictional losses. Okay, so so arbitrarily we cannot keep on increasing the number of blades, because it will increase the frictional loss. So we'll see anyway this thing later, but this is the wheel component CW2. Okay, and the radial component is the CR2, which is V2, which is along the direction of the blade. So C2 is the actual velocity. Okay. So this is at the outlet. What about the inlet? If I draw the inlet velocity triangle at the mean radius, say at this point, say C1 is the absolute velocity, which is coming from towards you to the plane of the screen. Okay. And U1 is the mean velocity of the blade. So the blade velocity at this point, obviously the blade velocity increases with the radius. So U1 is the mean velocity. Okay. So the relative velocity will be V1, which will be at an angle alpha 1 to the blade velocity. Okay. So this gives us the vane angle at the inlet, okay, at the mean section. What about the tip? At the tip also the absolute velocity is still C1. It is coming from outside. But the blade velocity is higher because at the tip, the radius is more, but the angular velocity is same. So the absolute like linear velocity is higher, U1t. So as a result, the relative velocity U1t will also be higher and the angle will be smaller. Okay. What about the root or the hub? At the root or the hub, U1h will be lesser because of the less radius of the hub. So V1h will be also smaller, but alpha 1 will increase. Okay, as you can see from the diagrams. So, and mean is somewhere in between these two. So impeller blade angle alpha 1 changes from the hub to the tip of the eye. Okay, so it bends more and more towards the tip. It becomes more and more towards the more and more towards the direction of movement of the blades. That is what we have seen in the picture also. Okay. Is it clear? We'll keep this diagram open here. This will be required for our subsequent analysis. I hope this is clear. Okay. So as I was discussing, tip factor, sorry. Horrible. That's why board work is better. So slip factor sigma depends on the number of vanes. There are empirical relations. This is a common empirical relation. Sigma is equal to 1 minus 0.63 pi by n, where n in the number of vanes. Okay. So you can see that if n is increased, this factor will decrease. So 1 minus this factor will increase. So sigma will keep on increasing. At the limit that the number of vanes is infinite, this factor will become 0. So sigma will be 1. Obviously, we cannot have infinite vanes, but theoretically, at the limit, this is the case. Okay. So this gives us the slip factor, okay, empirically. So in general, we have generally 19 to 21 vanes, okay, for typical impellers for centrifugal compressors. If you, as I was saying, or as you were saying correctly, if you keep on increasing the number of vanes further, the area available for the flow to occur will decrease. If you want to keep the flow rate constant, the relative velocity through the impeller will increase. As a result, frictional losses will increase. Okay. And if you keep the number of vanes very less, then the slip factor will be too low. Okay. So we will get very less wheel component. It will be clear just in a moment that we need larger wheel component because that actually gives us the pressure increase, and that actually gives us the that is the output of the work input. So if we have more wheel component, it means that the more work is being done in the impeller, or more work input can be sustained by the impeller for increasing the stagnation temperature and pressure. Okay. So now the theoretical thought to find out what is the work input for the compressor and the rise of pressure, we can find out what is the specific work input. Okay. So the torque change of angular momentum is equal to CW2, which is the wheel component here. Okay. Let us follow this diagram and this writing. CW2 into R2. R2 is the radius at this point. This is the angular momentum per unit mass flow rate at the exit. At the inlet, if we do the calculation based on the mean diameter, okay, For simple calculation, we will use just the mean diameter and mean radius. Okay. We cannot cater for the variation of the radius at this point for this type of calculation. Just a second. So we'll continue. Okay. These afternoon classes are much easier for me because I am not a morning person. I am a night person. My flow gets better and better as the day proceeds. Anyway, but unfortunately, all our classes are in the morning. So if it had been in the afternoon, discussions would have been much better quality. Anyway, so the change in momentum, angular momentum is Cw to R2, which is the angular momentum at the exit, minus Cw1 R1, angular momentum at the inlet, average angular momentum at the inlet. Multiplied by mass flow rate gives us the torque. Okay, this is the theoretical torque. Actual torque will be which or actual work which we need to provide will be higher, as we will discuss. So typically flow entry is axial. Okay, as you can see here. Okay, so what will be Cw1 in this case? Cw1 will be 0, right? What is Cw1? Cw1 is the component of the actual velocity at the inlet along the direction of the blade movement. Okay, along u1. So you can see that component of Cw1, C1, component of C1, which we will call as Cw1, along u1 is 0. Okay, so Cw1 is 0. When will Cw1 not be equal to 0? When will Cw1 not be equal to 0?
When the flow is not along axis.
Yes, so say there is some inlet guide vanes. Okay, in many cases there are inlet guide vanes before the impeller eye. So the role of the inlet guide vane is to change the direction of the absolute velocity. So inlet guide vanes are static component, not connected to the impeller. Okay, so in that case, C1 will not be along this direction, but maybe along maybe like this. Okay, maybe along this direction. In that case, there will be a Cw1. There is advantages and disadvantages also for that, but we'll discuss that. But if this is the case, there will be Cw1. Okay, if the absolute velocity is not perpendicular to u. In this case, the absolute velocity C1 is perpendicular to u1, so there is no wheel component. Cw1 is 0. Okay. If it is not 0, there is no problem. We can just include it in the calculation. I will solve a problem today to show you that. Okay. So per unit mass, the torque is Cw to R2 for this case where Cw1 is 0. Okay. So work done, what is the work done? Torque into angular velocity omega. So Cw to R2 into omega. R2 into omega is u2. Okay, blade velocity at the exit. So Cw2 into u2. Now what is Cw2? We have defined Cw2 as slip factor into u2. So Cw2 is sigma into u2. So work done is sigma into u2 square. This is the specific work input per unit mass. Okay, ideally this is the specific work input, but because there is frictional losses, okay, till now we have not accounted for frictional losses. Slip factor does not account for frictional losses. Slip factor is the inherent part of the flow. Okay, it is even for ideal flow without any friction, still there will be slip. Okay, it is not a resultant of the friction. So even if we consider ideally that there is no friction, still there will be slip factor. But if there is friction, to generate this amount of torque, we will need to provide some extra work. Okay, if there is friction to have, because there will be some losses due to friction, to generate this amount of torque or to change the velocity by this much, to generate Cw2, we'll need to provide some extra work. So some of this work will get lost as frictional work, as friction heat generation, and rest of the work will increase the velocity from C1 to C2. Okay. So actual case, instead of providing sigma into U2 square work, we will need to provide a work which is slightly greater than sigma into U2 square. Okay. So we will call this in terms of an extra factor, which is known as power input factor. Okay. Psi, power input factor, which has a value which is slightly greater than 1. Okay. It will depend on friction. If the friction increases, friction losses increases, what will happen to this factor? If the friction losses increase, it will increase, right? So ideally, if there is no friction, this factor is equal to 1. If there is no friction, the work that I have to supply to generate this much torque is equal to sigma into U2 square. But in real life, because there will be some friction loss, I have to supply a work which is slightly more. How much more? It is given by this. So 1.04 or 1.035 into sigma U2 square. Okay. So this additional factor is known as power input factor. And this denotes, or this is, this takes into account the frictional losses. Takes into account is not the correct. This is like the correct phrase here. Anyway, this takes into account the frictional losses that occurs only in the impeller. Okay. So if later on we will see that there is something called compressor efficiency. We have already discussed this in our cycle analysis, right? Compressor efficiency. That takes into account the frictional losses over the entire compressor. The entire compressor, there are two major components, the impeller and the diffuser. So there will be frictional losses in the impeller as well as in the diffuser. So overall, whatever is the frictional loss, that is represented, represented is the correct word, that is represented by the isentropic efficiency of the compressor. But the power input factor just represents the frictional losses occurring in the impeller. Okay. Obviously, power input factor will be related to isentropic efficiency of the compressor. I will come to that in a minute. Okay. But this is the power input factor. So the work input, work done on air per unit mass flow rate. So this is the specific work is equal to psi sigma U2 square. So this multiplied by the mass flow rate will give you the actual power input, okay, to the compressor. So this much amount of work is, or this much amount of specific work is getting inputted to the compressor, because there is no other avenue of work input. Work input only occurs in the impeller because of the movement of the impeller by the shaft. The diffuser, there is no work input. So overall work input in the compressor is psi sigma U2 square. Okay. So what is the overall stagnation temperature rise? Say the stagnation temperature at the inlet is T01. Okay. Stagnation temperature at the, we will take a break after a few minutes. Okay. I want to finish this part. Stagnation temperature at the outlet is T02. And stagnation temperature at the outlet of the diffuser is T03. Okay. So if we consider that the compressor consists of both the impeller plus the diffuser, obviously that is the case, right? Compressor consists of the impeller plus the diffuser. So overall increase in stagnation temperature is T03 minus T01. T01 is the stagnation temperature at the inlet of the compressor. T03 is the stagnation temperature at the outlet of the compressor, which is at the outlet of the diffuser section. So overall increase in stagnation temperature is T03 minus T01. So overall increase in stagnation enthalpy is Cp into T03 minus T01. Okay. So increase in stagnation enthalpy is equal to the whatever is the work input, correct? So whatever work input, specific work input provided to the compressor should be equal to this rise in the stagnation enthalpy, even if there are frictional losses. Because whatever frictional losses, stagnation temperature does not change. Means frictional losses also increase, the means just manifest as temperature rise. So we have seen that in a TS diagram, right? If you draw a TS diagram, again drawing it will be difficult here. But so this is the TS diagram. So even if there is frictional loss, the entropy will increase. But ideally, instead of going from here to here, we will go from here to here. Okay. We'll increase the size. So instead of going from this point to this point, in an ideal case, we will go from this point to this one. With this, we already know for compressor. Okay. For the same work input. Okay. Actually, we do in the opposite way when we study about the cycle. We just assume that this is the compressor pressure, means outlet pressure, and ideally this would have been the work input, and in an actual case, this is the work input. So, but if this was the work input, the stagnation temperature rise would have been this for the ideal case. But in actual case also, this is the stagnation temperature rise. But the pressure actually is not as much as which we could have obtained if there were no frictional losses. What I just explained, is it clear or is there any confusion? If there is confusion, please let me know. So remember that even if there are frictional losses, stagnation temperature rise only depends on the work input. But the stagnation pressure rise will actually decrease with increasing friction. Okay. So if this is the work input is given as Cp into delta T or delta H. Okay. If this is the work input, Cp into delta T, this is going to remain constant whether there is frictional losses or not. This is TS diagram. Okay. This is S and this is T. So this is going to remain constant. Okay. So stagnation temperature rise is going to remain constant, but you can see that the stagnation pressure rise would have been more here. We would have gone to this pressure, but because of friction, we are going to a lower pressure. Okay, we are going to a lower pressure. Okay, the actual rise because of the work input is actual pressure rise is going to be lower. Okay. How do we define the compressor efficiency? We define it in terms of that we have already done many times, right? We define the compressor efficiency as this work input by this work input, right? This divided by this. So delta T, this delta T, ideal delta T by actual delta T. Okay, for the same pressure ratio. That is how we define, right? T02S minus T01 by T02 minus T01. What is T02S point? This is the T02S point. This is T02 point, and this is T01 point. Anyway, this will be clear from our problems, but this should be very clear to you. Otherwise, you won't be able to relate. Okay. So now this 02 that I am calling is actually 03 in terms of this when we go into the details of the compressor, because 03 is now the outlet point from the compressor and 01 is the inlet. 02 is just in between the impeller and diffuser. Okay. Where has that option gone? Why cannot I? Anyway, okay, I hope this is clear. Otherwise, think about this. So the stagnation temperature rise, Cp into delta T, T03 minus T01 is equal to psi sigma into U2 square. Okay, this is the specific work input. Now, what is the stagnation temperature rise across the diffuser? What is the stagnation temperature rise across the diffuser?
0.
0, because there is no work input, and obviously there is no heat input or anything. So no stagnation enthalpy change occurs as per the first law. Okay, so the entire stagnation enthalpy rise occurs across the impeller. So the stagnation temperature across the impeller we can write as Cp T02 minus T01. So obviously Cp T03 minus T01 is equal to Cp T02 minus T01, which is equal to psi sigma U2 square. Okay, so this I have written also. T01 is the stagnation temperature at the inlet of the compressor. T02 is the stagnation temperature at the inlet of the diffuser or at the exit of the impeller. T03 is the stagnation temperature at the exit of the diffuser. Okay. So T03 by T minus T01, we can write as, so this stagnation temperature rise, this line. Stagnation temperature rise across the compressor is psi sigma U2 square by Cp. Okay. Psi sigma U2 square by Cp. What is the goal of doing all this calculation? What do we want in a compressor? What are we trying to find out? What is the role of a compressor? Role of a compressor is to increase the pressure, right? So what should we try to find out? Ultimately, after doing all this blade calculation and angle and velocity, what should we try to find out?
Pressure at outlet.
Yes, so the increase in pressure, basically pressure at outlet. So what is the pressure ratio that the compressor provides? If the inlet pressure is 1 bar, what will be the outlet pressure? So we want to find out the pressure ratio across this stage, okay? Because that is our important goal of the compressor. How much pressure ratio can be obtained in this compressor? That pressure ratio depends on all these velocity changes that are occurring and things like this. So what we are trying to do, although I'm going very slowly in steps just to make you understand individual aspects of this, but we actually what we are doing is step by step, we are trying to find out what is the pressure ratio of this compressor in terms of the velocities and velocity diagrams. Okay. Similarly, we will do for axial compressors also, but in this case also we are doing. So to find the pressure ratio, what we have done, we have first found the work input, and then we have found the stagnation temperature rise. Okay. So stagnation temperature rise, this line we have found. Okay. In terms of known quantity, U2 will be a known quantity based on rotational speed and diameter. Sigma is a known quantity, slip ratio. Psi is a known quantity. Okay. Power input factor based on frictional losses, manufacturing. Cp is obviously known. So T03 minus T01 we can calculate from here. So now how will we find the pressure ratio? Pressure ratio is the ratio of this pressure, red line by this green line. How will we find the pressure ratio? Quick, because we are going very slowly. If we have to finish within time today, we have to. Otherwise, I have to just go through in motions. I want to ask you because then you get also involved. How to find the pressure ratio between this red line and the green line? Pressure ratio across the compressor. Actual pressure ratio, not the ideal pressure ratio. It's shown here also. This diagram, what I have drawn. So what we are trying, what is the actual pressure ratio? P03 by P01, right? Why you are not answering, any of you? P03 by P01 is T03s by T01 to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So for this isentropic process, we can write that P03 by P01 is equal to T03s by T01 to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. Okay. So we need to find T03s. We already know what is T03 from this. So our efficiency of the isentropic efficiency of the compressor will give us T03s. That efficiency is the same efficiency that we have already discussed. Eta C is T03s minus T01 by T03 minus T01. So length of this line by the length of this entire line. Okay. This line by the entire line. T03s minus T01 by T03 minus T01. Okay. So this will give us what is the value of T03s. I can write also in this form. Okay. So once you know what is T03s, we can easily calculate the pressure rise. Okay. If you want to write it in analytical expression, we can write like this. Eta C into T03 minus T01 is equal to, if you take T01 common here, T03s minus T01 by T01 minus 1. So T03s by T01 is P03 by P01 whole to the power gamma minus 1 by gamma. Okay. Minus this 1 is equal to eta C by this T01 goes to the other side into T03 minus T01. Okay. Or P03 by P01 is 1 plus this entire term whole to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. So this entire term we can write as eta C by T01 into T03 minus T01, which is psi sigma U2 square by Cp. So if we replace that, we get this expression. P03 by P01 is equal to 1 plus eta C. Eta C is known, is the compressor efficiency, psi is known, sigma is known, U2 is known. U2 is R2 into, R2 is the radius into angular velocity by Cp T01 inlet condition known to the whole to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. This is how we get the pressure ratio. Okay, so I will pause here, think about these factors, and then I will continue this discussion after taking a 5 minutes break. So we'll continue the discussion. Can you still see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So from this, you can see that what do we see here? If the U2 is increasing, okay, means the blade velocity at the exit is high, pressure ratio often will be higher. Obviously, it is understandable because it means that we are pushing the flow more and more. Okay, so overall pressure ratio will increase in the compressor. So extra velocity is generated that in the diffuser that is recovered back. Okay, then what about slip factor? If slip factor is low, means less number of vanes are present, then the pressure ratio is less. Again, this is understandable because we are not able to fully utilize the pushing movement of the blade. Yeah. And what happens is that because there is a certain amount of gap that is present between the like the end of the impeller and start of the diffuser. So that I think I did not explain there in the beginning. The fluid also has a tendency to go back in the direction. So the pressure generally at these points will be quite high, right? Because it is being pushed along here as compared to the pressure which is just before the next vane or here. Okay. Although I'm writing plus minus, it's just that relatively this pressure is higher as compared to this pressure. There is a tendency of the fluid to also move back outside and go like this. Okay. So this also contributes to the slip factor. Okay. This also contributes to the slip factor. So average velocity gets reduced. CW2. Okay. Anyway, so slip factor also plays an important role in P03 by P01. Obviously, if the efficiency is low, isentropic efficiency, then you get less pressure ratio. Okay. What about this power input factor? It looks like if the friction is higher, obviously we have discussed that power input factor will be high. Okay. It looks like that it is beneficial that the power input factor increases, we will get more pressure ratio. But is it true? So will frictional losses increase our pressure ratio? It should not be true, right? So then why this dichotomy? What is the reason that it is showing that if sigma is increasing, we will get more pressure ratio? Not sigma, sorry, psi, power input factor. If psi is increasing, will all the other factors remain constant?
I think the eta C will also change with psi.
Correct, very good. So frictional losses more mean obviously isentropic efficiency will decrease. Okay. So in one way, as I have explained, this power input factor denotes frictional losses only in the impeller, whereas eta C represents the frictional losses in the entire compressor. Obviously, it also includes the part in the impeller and then the other parts like diffuser and volute, everything. Okay. So if psi increases, actually eta C is going to decrease. So in general, we are not going to get extra, although it look like this, but these are not independent factors. Okay. So if psi increases, eta C will decrease. So if actually frictional losses increase, the overall value will decrease. Okay. So pressure ratio will decrease if there are more frictional losses. So these points what I have just discussed are noted here. If you are reading the note later on, I'll just quickly go through them. It looks like increasing power input factor is good. However, it is not actually so, as it leads to decreasing eta C. Power input factor and eta C are related. Okay. So low power input factor means high efficiency of the compressor. However, as I have already explained, efficiency of the compressor not only depends on the power input factor or not only depends on the frictional losses in the impeller, it also depends on frictional losses in the diffuser. Okay. Then another point is that sigma limits. Sigma is the slip factor. It limits the work capacity even under isentropic compression consideration. Very important point. Even there is no frictional loss, nothing. Okay. That does not mean that sigma is going to be 1. slip is still going to be there. So I have completely lost track. Yeah, there is supposed to be an internship presentation today. That's completely tumbled me. Okay. So sigma, okay, so I was saying that even in isentropic condition, there will be the effect of slip. Okay. So typically the value is around 0.9, 19 to 21 vanes. If the number of vanes is high, it leads to less area at the impeller eye, resulting in higher inlet velocity and higher friction. Okay. So these two factors, we already understood these three factors. So another option is to increase U2 to increase the pressure ratio. But U2 we cannot arbitrarily increase, because if we keep on increasing U2, the stresses, centrifugal stresses that are generated, increases. So we are limited by the maximum centrifugal stresses, or that can be sustained by the material. Okay. So typically maximum limit depends on the material. So aluminum, it will be lower. If it is titanium impeller, it is higher. So I don't know the exact values for different materials. So I think it is 400 to 450 meter per second. Recently, I think there is increase. You can just check the books for different materials. What are the typical values maximum that can be obtained? And the other factor is T01. We do not have any control, because it is the inlet condition. Okay. So this is how the different factors influence the pressure ratio. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. So we'll continue. Okay. So this part I hope is clear. If there is any problem, you should be able to find out the pressure ratio and relate it with the, so if the like geometry and the angular speed or rotational speed, you should be able to find out the work input to the compressor as well as the pressure ratio. Next is so as I was discussing about the inlet, okay, just already we have discussed, just to repeat it in a more descriptive way. At all these sections, the inlet velocity is C1, but the blade velocity is going to change. At the hub, it is going to be U1H, which will be lower than blade velocity at the tip. Okay, because here the radius is small, here the radius is large, and the mean velocity is in between the hub and tip velocity. Okay, so as a result, we can see that the relative velocity also at the hub is lowest, at the tip is highest, and at the mean position it is intermediate. Okay. And the angle as well also will be highest at the hub. So U1 alpha 1H is highest, and it will be lowest at the tip, and at the mean radius it will be in between. Okay. So how to calculate these velocities? This velocity is equal to 2 pi r into rotational speed in RPS. Okay, 2 pi r into rotational speed in rotation per second. If it is given as RPM, rotation per minute, it will be 2 pi r n by 60. Okay, so like this at different locations we can calculate the velocity. So one thing is that sometimes it is required to calculate the static temperature and pressure at the inlet. Okay, static temperature and pressure at the inlet. But we actually know the stagnation temperature and pressure at the inlet. Stagnation conditions are known from the upstream side. So to calculate the static temperature and pressure, we have to find it based on the inlet velocity and the stagnation temperature. Okay. If upstream conditions before the inlet compressor is T01 and P01, the static conditions and the inlet has to be calculated, can be calculated like this. So T1 is related to T01. T1 is related to T01 as we know that T01 is equal to T1 plus C1 square by 2Cp, where C1 is the actual velocity. Okay. So as a result, T1 is equal to T01 minus C1 square by 2Cp. If you know C1, we can find out what is T1 from T01. Okay. So once we can find out static temperature, we can find out the static pressure using the isentropic relation. P1 by P01 is equal to T1 by T01 all to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. Okay, and we can find out the static pressure P1. And density, if we want to find out, density is P1 by RT1. Okay, so the mass flow rate at the inlet is equal to cross-sectional area at the inlet pi by 4 d at the tip. Okay, d1t square minus d at the hub, d1h square. So pi by 4 d1t square minus d1h square is the cross-sectional area into the axial velocity at the inlet. Okay, the velocity in this direction. Okay, if C, in this case, axial velocity is equal to C1, but if C1 is any other direction, then the axial velocity we have to take into, so that we are writing as CA1 into density ρ1, which we know how to calculate. Okay, so first we have to find out P1 and T1, then we can find the density. So this will give us the mass flow rate at the inlet. So m dot is equal to pi by 4 d1t square minus d1h square CA1 into ρ1. CA1 is the axial component of C1. d1t is the impeller I tip diameter and d1h is the impeller I hub diameter. CA1 is equal to C1 if the inlet flow is axial, as I was discussing. If there is no inlet guide vane, like I have shown in the case. Yeah. Okay. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Or yes, good. So next, okay. So this also sometimes you need to calculate. If there is, I have given a problem, I think, where you will need to calculate. This is there in the. So I uploaded a couple of problems on the centrifugal compressor. These are from the book by El Sayed Ahmed. So you can go through these problems. Try to solve them on your own. If you don't understand, then only try to go through the solution. Otherwise, your concepts will not be clear. Okay. So it need not be the case that always the C1 is in the axial direction. Okay. So sometimes there are inlet guide vanes. Okay. So inlet guide vane will change the angle at which the inlet flow occurs, flow inlet occurs. So for example, in this case, the inlet guide vane has an angle of delta. Okay. So as a result, the C1 deviates from the axial direction by delta. Okay. So inlet guide vane, if it is a constant angle delta, constant free wheel angle at the hub, tip or mean radius, at all the locations, C1 will be deviated by delta. Okay. Need not be constant, but we are assuming that the free wheel, this is known as free wheel. Okay. Before the inlet itself, we are giving a change in direction. If the free wheel direction is constant delta, okay, so C1 is deviated from the axial direction by delta in all the locations. Okay. In this case, the velocity triangle looks like this. Instead of this, now you can compare with this. So the axial velocity at the inlet is CA1, okay, which is different from C1. Okay, CA1 is C1 into cos delta. If delta is known and C1 is known, we can find out what is CA1. CA1 is equal to C1 into cos delta. And accordingly, you can see what will be. So U1 is going to be same as previous U1 because that depends on the rotational velocity and radius. So U1 at hub, U1 at tip, and U1 at mean is going to be same. So V1H, V1T, and V1M is going to change. So if we provide a wheel, okay, pre-wheel inlet guide vane, what will happen to V1? Will it increase or decrease? Without and with inlet guide vane, will the relative velocity be higher or lower? In which case it will be higher? Quick. We're running out of time.
I think in the case of pre-wheel, it should be lower, like.
It will be lower in case of pre-wheeled. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So pre-wheeled, yes. So inlet guide vane, if it is provided, it will be lower. Okay. So that is the actual reason behind providing inlet guide vane. So to reduce the relative velocity, So what is the relate? So the blades actually are subjected to relative velocity, right? If you are sitting on the blade at the inlet guide at the impeller eye, the velocity you will see is the relative velocity. Okay. So the relative velocity, if it is low, it means that frictional losses will be lower. Okay. And another thing is that the relative velocity should not go beyond Mach number equal to 1 generally. Okay. Otherwise, it will lead to shocks and lead to large amount of losses. So where the maximum velocity occurs, relative velocity, it occurs at the tip of the impeller. I have given, I think, a problem on this also. At the tip of the impeller eye, at the tip of the impeller eye, we have the maximum relative velocity V1T. So by introducing a P-wheel angle inlet guide vane, okay, we can reduce the relative velocity and the relative Mach number. Okay, what will be the relative Mach number? V1T by speed of sound at that location, which will be root over gamma r T1. Okay, root over gamma r T1. So we can reduce the relative Mach number at the inlet so that it is below sonic speed. So that is why it is provided. So this is the benefit of inlet guide vane. What is the drawback of inlet guide vane? Can anyone say? Just looking at this diagram. If this is always beneficial, obviously we will always use it. Then there must be some drawback also. We are not always using it. And this drawback in thermodynamics point of view only we can calculate. What is the drawback? It is not related to manufacturing or anything else. What will happen to the work pressure rise and the work input and pressure rise? We want to provide as much work as possible so that we get the highest pressure rise. So if we introduce inlet guide vane, will the pressure rise remain same or will it increase or decrease? Answers. If we introduce inlet guide vanes, so will the pressure rise remain constant? Will it increase or will it decrease? Keeping everything else same. You have to relate. You have to be able to relate all the things that you have studied. Today we have discussed in so much detail, slowly going through all the part so that the concept is very clear. Otherwise, I could have quickly gone through everything and finished off the class quickly. I'm taking this time so that you are able to relate it physically. You have a mental image of how the velocity, how the flow is occurring. Ruval, any answer?
Like I think the work input will decrease, like because there will be a whirl component at the inlet.
Good.
So
Good. Yes, work
so
input will decrease. It means that the pressure rise will also decrease, right? Because it will
yes,
depend on the work input. Okay, so in this expression, what we have discussed, the torque is equal to how much? Work done is torque into omega. So torque is per unit mass fluid Cw2 R2 minus Cw1 R1. Okay. So instead of only having sigma U2 square, we will also have Cw1 into R1 into omega. So Cw1 U1. So sigma U2 square minus Cw1 U1. So this Cw1, because the inlet will also have a wind. So the rise in the angular momentum will be less. As a result, work input will be less, and as a result, temperature rise will be less. This will not be the expression of temperature. If you are just thinking, how can I relate this to the, it is not showing any change. But will this be the temperature rise in that case? If there is inlet guide vane, How will it get modified? Can you say? So sigma u2 square, this comes from where? This comes from the outlet angular momentum. If there is an inlet angular momentum, that will also manifest as minus Cw1 u1, right? That also term will be there. Similarly, in this case also, sigma u2 square minus Cw1 u1, that will be there always. So everything will change. Pressure will also get reduced. Okay. Is it clear? Or is there any doubt? Okay. So I have written it here. Work done in this case is Cw2 R2 minus Cw1 R1 mean into omega, which is equal to Cw2 U2 minus Cw1 U1 mean, which is equal to sigma U2 square minus Cw1 U1 mean. So the actual work input, considering the power input factor, is psi sigma U2 square minus Cw1 U1 mean. So from this we can find that T03 minus T01 will be this term psi sigma U2 square minus Cw1 U1 mean divided by Cp. And the pressure rise will be 1 plus eta C psi sigma U2 square minus Cw1 U1 mean divided by Cpt01 whole to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. This is how it will change. Okay. So the advantage is that we can keep the relative velocity lower. So lesser frictional losses and below Mach number, below sonic velocity, subsonic range, even at the tip. But the drawback is that our pressure rise across the stage is lower. Okay. Is it clear or any doubt is there? These are very important small things. But if I give you in a problem, you should be able to solve this. Please consider this in the problem. You cannot just memorize that this is the formula of the problem. Okay, and I will just replace the value, because obviously then your answer will be wrong. This is just for a particular case we have derived to understand how it occurs. But in other cases, it may be different. I'm not getting any response from you guys today. You are busy with something else? Match, you are watching cricket match or something. Yeah? What is happening? So this is the case. Okay. So there is another small thing before we finish off. That is the concept of backward swept vanes. So till now, what type of vanes we have seen? We have seen the vanes are perpendicular to the circumference. Okay. So the direction, relative velocity direction V2 is along the radial direction. Okay. Follows the radius. Okay. Again, this is not always the case. So there can be cases where I can have backward swept vanes. So the vanes look like this. Okay, I think we had seen also one case like this. This was perpendicular. Okay, velocity is radial at the exit, and this is backward swept vane. So in that case, how will the velocity diagram look like? U2 is again U2, like how you calculate. Okay, so it will depend on U2 is what? Omega into R2. That is going to be true. But the relative velocity V2 is now at an angle. Instead of being radial, it is angle beta to the radial direction. This is known as the backward swept angle. Okay. And as a result, C2 will decrease and CW2 will decrease. Okay. So CW2 will decrease. Obviously, directly you can say that that is a drawback. What is the drawback? CW2 decrease means less work input, less power pressure rise. Okay. We want the CW to be as high as possible. Okay. So if CW2 decreases, that is. So then what is why this concept is still there? Backward swept vanes. If CW2 is very high, okay, in the diffuser, when it goes out of the impeller into the diffuser, for very high velocities, there will be larger requirement of diffusion, and the diffusion process will be more stringent. Okay, So in the diffuser, you have to decrease a larger velocity to a small velocity. So there will be more frictional losses as well as more chances of separation. Or otherwise, you need a very long diffuser if you want to increase the area slowly. I will discuss this in the next page. But the crux is that the summary that you can take from here is that more change of velocity needs to be done in the diffuser if C2 is larger. If C2 is smaller, the inlet velocity to the diffuser is smaller, so diffusion requirement is less. Okay, so as a result, frictional loss is less and we get higher efficiency. Okay, so if C2 is less, we get higher efficiency. Okay, efficiency is different and pressure rise is different. Efficiency gives us an idea about if we get a certain amount of work, give a certain amount of work, how much of it will be usefully utilized for increasing the pressure. So that will be better. You will need less work for the same pressure rise. But in a single stage, the pressure rise will be lower. Okay, so you will need more number of stages for the same pressure rise. Although the efficiency will be higher if we have backward swept vents, the pressure rise in a single stage will be lower. I hope this is clear. Okay, so because efficiency will be higher for backward swept vents, but the pressure rise will be lower. Okay, CW2 is lower, which mean rise in temperature and pressure is lower. Okay, is this clear or any questions? So small concepts, these are very important. There is another drawback. Yes, you are asking something?
Yes.
Yes, tell me.
Sir, I said it was clear.
Cannot hear it.
Sir, I said it was clear.
Clear. Okay, good. So there is another drawback. What happens is that because these are rotating at very high velocities, okay, and the temperature also increases in the impeller because of the diffusion. In the impeller also you can see that, right, that the cross-sectional area is increasing. Here the cross-sectional area is less, here it is more. There is diffusion action even in the impeller. So the pressure and temperature rises even in the impeller. Okay. So as a result, because of very large centrifugal stresses, the blades, if they are bent like this, they tend to straighten out over long period of operation. Okay, so ultimately they have the tendency to become like this. Okay, so so this is why, so there is a difficulty in backward swept vents even from the point of view of operation for long duration, long operation, or you have to make them more stronger, means you have to put more material so that they can hold their shape. That is another difficulty. But the advantage is there that efficiency will be higher. Okay. So that's why they are also used. So the final point that we will just have a quick discussion on, we will not go into details of designing of diffusers and anything else. So diffuser or a centrifugal compressor. Diffuser is like a normal diffuser. Now what is the role of the diffuser? It should decrease the velocity and use that kinetic energy to increase the static temperature and pressure. Stagnation temperature remains same. Static temperature and pressure should increase. Okay. So velocity in the combustion chamber should be as low as possible. Diffuser decreases the velocity and increases the static pressure. So we get more pressure recovered. Okay. In real case, there is some loss in stagnation pressure due to frictional losses. Okay. What will happen to the stagnation temperature? It will not change even if there is frictional loss, because stagnation temperature, if you use first law, stagnation enthalpy remains constant if there is no work input or if there is no work or heat transfer. Okay. Typically, in normal design, compressor outlet velocities are designed to be low, like 90 to 100 meter per second, which is relatively low because the inlet velocity may be around 400 meter, 450 meter per second, as we were discussing. Okay. Even larger. Okay, if U is 400 meter per second, C2 is going to be even larger. So the velocity at the inlet of the diffuser is quite large. And to avoid separation, because what is happening in the diffuser, you are going against the pressure gradient. The flow is occurring against the pressure gradient. Pressure is increasing and flow is going in the direction of increasing pressure. So it is going along an adverse pressure gradient. So there is a lot of chance of flow separation. So to avoid flow separation, if you quickly increase the area, there will be flow separation, okay, from the walls. So the angle of the diffuser is kept less than 7 degree, okay, lower than 7 degree. It is just seen from empirical, means experimental evidence, that if you go beyond 7 degree, chances of separation increases. Okay, so if it is 7 degree, it means that the walls are deviating from the straight line by 3.5 degree in each direction. Okay, so the cross-sectional area increases by 7 degree. Okay, if you keep lower degree, okay, chances of separation will be low. If instead of 7 degree, if I keep 4 degree, chances of separation will be low. But the same for the same diffusion, ultimately the diffusion will depend on what is the inlet area and what is the outlet area. For the same diffusion, you will need a longer diffuser. Okay, because ultimately outlet area you have fixed, so you will need a longer diffuser if the change is 4 degree. So in that case, frictional losses will increase. Okay, so diffuser angle is kept at 7 degree lower. Higher angle leads to separation and reverse flow. However, smaller angle lead to longer diffuser length for same pressure rise and more frictional losses. Optimum value is 7 degree. Okay, so this is how it looks. So the flow comes at C2 velocity. If we ignore the small gap, then it goes inside at C2 velocity, and then the velocity is gradually reduced, increases the temperature and pressure. Any questions? I will quickly, we have very little amount of time. Well, I will just quickly browse through a problem, very simple problem, and you can see that in more detail later, and solve other problems also later on. Just to give you a feel of numerical problem. Okay, so all this theory should make it possible for you to solve any numerical problem. Obviously, that those numerical problems will be within the scope of what we have discussed. Okay, so what is the pressure rise? What is the temperature rise? What will happen if there is a inlet guide vane with an angle 20 degree? This type of questions you can ask. Expect. Okay. Any questions? Who guys are there? Nikhilesh, clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let us quickly just browse through this problem. Try to finish it in 10 minutes, and then you can try it in more depth later on. Okay. So following data is available for a centrifugal compressor. This is just based on whatever we have discussed today. Okay. So we'll just apply that numerically to get a feel of numerical problem, because we have just gone through theory. This was not part of the original note, so I have added it as an extra. So you can see that the page numbers will not match with the page numbers that I'm using here, because last year I did not. I had less time, so I could not teach these problems. So anyway, the following data is available for a centrifugal compressor. Impeller eye diameter. Okay, let me just keep the diagram open for a second. Impeller eye mean diameter. Okay, so the mean diameter is 0.2 meter. Impeller diameter, overall impeller diameter is 0.6 meter at this point. Okay, 0.6 meter. Rotational speed is 6,000 RPM. Actually, it is low. In general, it will be quite higher, 18,000, 20,000 RPM. I quickly wrote this problem, so I have used 6,000 RPM. So ideally, it should be much higher. So because I am using less values, all our values will be very less, pressure rise and everything. So if you had taken more realistic values like 20,000 RPM, you will get more realistic pressure rise. Okay, maybe in the exam I can create a problem like that. So in this case, we have an inlet guide vane with an angle 10 degree. Okay, and inlet stagnation temperature and pressure are given as 280 Kelvin and 1 bar. Okay. Then we have the defined factors also known. The power input factor is 1.03. The slip factor is 0.9, and isentropic efficiency of the compressor is also 0.9. And the axial velocity at the inlet is known from, say, upstream side, from where the fluid is coming. It is 80 meters per second. Okay, so we want to calculate the specific work input and the compressor pressure ratio. Okay, let us again just quickly summarize what we have. We have the eye mean diameter. We have D1. You can say it is D1, and we have also D2. D1 is 0.2 and D2 is 0.6. we'll do the calculation based on mean diameter of the eye. Rotational speed is 100 rotation per second, 6000 RPM. Inlet guide vane is angle is 10 degree. Inlet stagnation conditions are given and all the factors are given to us. Okay. And CA1, which is the inlet velocity, axial velocity is 80 meter per second. So obviously what we will do, we will start with drawing the velocity triangle. So we'll start with drawing the velocity triangle at the inlet. Okay. So if you look at this with pre-wheel, the inlet velocity triangle looks like this. Right? So at the mean, if you say, we have C1 at an angle delta t, delta equal to 10 degree, and U1, which we do not know, we have to calculate, and V1 is the relative velocity at an angle alpha 1. And because we are just using mean, I am not using the subscript m here because all the calculation is just assuming mean. And CW1 is the tangential component of C1, okay, which will play a role in the work input and pressure rise, which will reduce the work input and pressure rise, okay, as I was saying. So CA1 is 80 meter per second, it is given. U1 will be equal to pi d into rotational speed in second. Okay. So pi d1, d is the diameter at the inlet. So d1 is given as 0.2, 6000 by 60. Okay. So this is the velocity. Because rotational speed we have taken very less, all the velocities will come out very less. Okay. Slightly lower than realistic values. Anyway, U1 is equal to 62.832 meter per second. Once we know what is, so U1 will be required later. Okay. And we need to know also CW1. Okay, that we will calculate later. And for calculating CW1, we need to know what is C1. So directly we can calculate CA1 10 delta. Okay, but I have calculated C1 here just to give you a feel of what are the velocities. So C1 cos delta is equal to CA1, or C1 is equal to CA1, which is 80 meter per second by cos 10 degree. So it comes out as 81.234 meter per second. Okay, this is the inlet velocity triangle, which we'll keep open here. So the exit velocity triangle, the inlet was here, right? This was the inlet. Mean diameter d1 by 2 is the mean radius, impeller eye mean radius. So from here the flow goes here and goes out. Because nothing is mentioned about vane angle, we will assume it goes out straight, radially, at a velocity v2. Okay, and the blade velocity here is u2, and CW2 is slip factor into u2, and C2 is the actual velocity. Okay, which we do not know. It will depend on the angle. So CW2 is equal to sigma into U2. So to find CW2, we need to find out what is U2. Okay, so U2 is equal to pi d2 n by 60. So pi into 0.6 by into 6000 by 60, which comes out to be 188.496 meter per second. Okay, so once you find this is the speed, you can see that this is quite less than 400 or 500 that we had discussed. CW2 is equal to 0.9 into U2, which comes out to be 169.646 meter per second. Okay. So this is the velocity, wheel component of velocity at the exit. So now the torque is equal to CW per unit mass flow is CW2 R2 minus CW1 R1. Okay. As I was saying, if there is inlet guide vane, we also have to include this part, CW1 R1. So CW1 is C1 sine delta, which is 81.234 into sine 10. You could have directly found also using CA1 10 delta. So anyway, CW1 is 14.106 meter per second. Okay. So once you calculate what is CW1, just replace the value. So what we'll do, we will just first write it in terms of work input, specific work input, which is the work input per unit mass flow rate is equal to the power input factor into CW2 R2 minus CW1 R1 into omega, which is equal to CW2 U2. R2 into omega is U2 minus CW1 U1. R1 into omega is U1 into psi. So we know all the values here. Psi is 1.03. Okay. CW2 we have calculated 169.646. U2 we have calculated. CW1 we have calculated, and U1 also we have calculated 62.832. So we get W to be equal to 32,024 joule per kg. Okay, so this is the specific work input for the compressor. Question? I will take just 2 minutes to finish. Questions? So we want to calculate the work input, and what was the question? Pressure ratio. Okay, specific work input we have calculated. Pressure ratio we know how to calculate now, because work input is related to the stagnation. Work input is equal to the increase in stagnation enthalpy, H03 minus H01. Okay, or stagnation temperature rise, T03 minus T01 is work input by Cp. Okay, so 32,024.013 divided by 1005. Cp is 1005 joule per kg Kelvin. So you get T03 minus T01 equal to 31.8647 Kelvin. This is the stagnation temperature. Again, this value is less because we have assumed a very small rotational speed. Otherwise, this would have been 150 or something like that. Okay. So from the efficiency of the isentropic efficiency of the compressor, we can find out T03s. Eta C is equal to T03s minus T01 by T03 minus T01. Very standard expression. You have used it hundreds of times. So 0.9 is equal to T03s minus 280. 280 is T01 divided by T03 minus T01, which we have already calculated, 31.8647. So this gives us a value of T03s equal to 308.678 Kelvin. Again, I will iterate. This value is less. It should have been 400 something for realistic calculations with a higher velocity. So once we know what is T03s and T01, we can obviously calculate the pressure rise. P03 by P01 is T03s by T01 whole to the power gamma by gamma minus 1. Compressor deals with air, so gamma is gamma of air. So this all the plug in the values 308.678 by 280 whole to the power 1.4 by 0.4, and you will get 1.406. Okay. This is not very high. For actual compressor, it can be around 4. Okay, I have given some assignments where you will get more realistic values. If you take it a higher rotation, you can just do the problem with 20,000 RPM and see what are the values that you are getting for pressure rise and work input. Okay. So this is how we can solve a numerical problem. Okay. This also includes the effect of the inlet guide vane. Similarly, you can see other effects also if you want. These cases. Any questions?
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, how did we know that delta is in the other direction?
Delta
I mean
is
that. I mean the direction.
not in this direction. You are saying
not in the opposite one. How did we know that, sir?
Not like this. You are saying. Huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, that is by definition. Inlet guide vane, if we say that delta is positive, it means that it is in the direction. If we had said that delta is minus 10 degree or the inlet guide vanes give an angle which is in the negative direction, then only you would have assumed like this. Otherwise, always assume that
okay,
it is
sir,
in
it
this
is
direction.
A convention.
And always this is going to be also like this does not have, this is not useful, right? Because if you use this, what was the reason that we were using delta? We were using it to reduce the specific relative velocity, right? So if you use this, you can see that the relative velocity will be
much higher.
Much higher. Okay. So this will be the relative velocity. This will be u. This will be u, and this will be relative velocity. So inlet Mach number will exceed sonic speed. Okay. There is advantage also. CW1 will be higher. Sorry, no. There is advantage. CW1 will be negative. It means that the pressure increase will be higher because this part will also get added. But there is no point in getting more pressure if the efficiency is lower. This will decrease the efficiency drastically. So ultimately, you want the best efficiency, right? You can increase the number of stages. So efficiency is what determines the fuel, like amount of fuel that is required. So efficiency will be lower. Any other question? Practice the problems that I have uploaded. and try to follow the convention that we have followed and try to understand this material, go through it. Everything is explained in this text, so it should give you a very clear idea. Okay. If you go through the books, it may confuse you. If you go through the books, you can go through these parts which is present in El Sayed Amen. Otherwise, it may become somewhat jumbled up. Different books have different treatments. If there is no question, then we'll stop the class. Let me download the attendance. Thank you for attending this extra class, long duration. And next Thursday, so many holidays on gas turbine classes, where we actually need more classes. CMTFE is going very quickly. So Thursday is again holiday, right? Diwali. So Friday we will have a class in the morning, 1 hour, and then we will see. Okay. I will send you your marks. So okay, you don't have to wait for the next class. But tomorrow I will try to finish. Okay, thank you. And let me stop the recording.